which I've now done, and say welcome everyone to our weekly call. So good to have you all on. Let me just share my screen so you can see what we're going to talk about this week. Why is that not working? Let me do that again. Doesn't normally do that. Let me try that again. Share screen. That's better. Right, so hopefully everyone can see that. So the terms of our structure this week, as you're hopefully all aware, in a moment we're going to talk about the DNS Research Federation, or more specifically, Emily Taylor, in fact, and Lucien will be talking about the DNS Research Federation, because I got a message from Emily last night saying she was still recovering from COVID. So I think it's going to be a double act, which would be marvellous. So we'll find out more about the DNS Research Federation, what it's sort of done in its first, I think, roughly year of existence or something like that. And then, as always, I'll sort of touch on some recent developments, just signpost some forthcoming events and what we're going to cover on the call next, and then anything else that anyone wants to talk about, time permitting. So that's the plan this week. So let me stop sharing that immediately. And without further ado, let me introduce Lucien and/or Emily. I'll let you decide how you're going to play this. If you want to share slides, you can do. You can share your screen or individual slides directly, or just talk, whichever is best for you. So over to you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Yes, as you said, I'm still actually have got COVID, so I'm going to share the presentation with Lucien, who's here with me, and I'll get as far as I can, hopefully without going into a massive coughing fit or anything else like that. But delighted to join your call today, which is always so useful, and to see familiar and new faces among the group. So let's just see if I can advance the slides. Yes, I'm going to talk to you about the organisation itself and what we've been doing, and then I'm going to hand over to Lucien, who'll talk about the data analytics side of it, the DNS Analytics Platform that he and our tech team have been building, and hopefully then have an open discussion with you about, potentially particularly sources of data that members of this group may be able to help us with, or advise us on. So in terms of why we're doing what we're doing, there were three main drivers really. First was that although I've spent a lot of my career in both the internet governance and standards communities, we are quite sort of inward looking, I guess, would be one way of putting it, is that we don't, while there's a lot of activity among those communities and a lot of great work being done, it's often difficult to explain to people outside of those communities what's going on and why it matters to them. And that goes for both the sort of naming and addressing and also technical standards. And the technical standards, I've just got back from Plenipod, and again it's like thousands and thousands of people there all talking intensely, but probably very few people even within the DNS environment who aren't involved in ITU would sort of like be really in touch with what's going on and what the different drivers are there. I think we're fairly fortunate in the DNS environment in that there is a lot of data available, but it's patchy, so that there's a lot of data in certain areas and almost none in others. And generally speaking, where we do see evidence-driven policy papers coming out, that is not normally possible to peer review the data sources or to really understand, you know, how people reach the conclusions that they did from the data. So we have set up a new not-for-profit in the UK, and we aim to create a new centre of excellence on all aspects of the domain name system policy and standards. And the mission is to advance understanding of the domain name system and its impact on cybersecurity policy and technical standards. We've got three main areas of activity: education and research, access to data, and engagement in standards. And across those three areas of activity, really, we would be speaking with three distinct stakeholder groups: the education and research communities. And it's been really striking going around, particularly, you know, universities in the UK and US who have very large masters and PhD programs, telling us that they really don't teach this stuff very much, and they don't have many people more on the social science side who are engaged in studying it either. So there's clearly a need for research grants and access to data, but also a level of mentoring and support, so that some of the terminology, or even what data might be available to researchers to answer some of their research questions, is something that we can offer. The public safety community need industry intelligence, custom solutions, and also the similar access to industry experts. And for industry itself, whether that's the DNS, the technical community, or industry in the largest sense of the word, there's still an interest in having that objective information. And particularly, we found that industry stakeholders are very keen to get involved in the technical standards aspects of our work. So we have a website at dnsrf.org where we put up our activities. As you said, Andrew, at the beginning in your introduction, we've been working on this for just over a year, and I think we're going to publicly launch towards the end of the year or early new year, but we're still sort of putting up stuff as we go. So if you're interested in following what we're doing, please do have a look at our website. Our editorial ethos is one of neutrality and impartiality, and offering open access to data where feasible. Open access still because the data sources that we bring are a combination of commercial and publicly available sources. We clearly need to abide by the relevant terms and conditions. We also need to ensure that we know who we are dealing with, and so provide a level of accreditation for users, which I think is quite a familiar pattern in groups of this kind, such as the Morg or anti-phishing working group, that sort of approach to verifying users. So what have we been doing? Oops. We have been working across all three of those subject areas. On education and research, we've commissioned a special issue of the peer-reviewed Journal of Cyber Policy with the team at Chatham House, and we'll be publishing papers as they are ready, as they make it through the peer review and editorial processes. And each of those articles will be open access as well. And to sort of seed that, there'll be an open call for papers, which I'm hoping will come out this month or the next month. But we've also got some researchers underway, also helping us refine our DNS Analytics Platform as they go. We've got two teams at American University in DC. One's looking at a large-scale text analysis of every UDRP decision ever. Another is looking at the interplay, if you like, between the DNS and ransomware. At UCL, we have researchers who've been keen to understand the impact of encrypted DNS resolution on the fight against child abuse images online. And we have other projects in the pipeline, some looking like the Buenos Aires researcher looking at competition issues in the DNS marketplace, others looking at the market in Latin America, sale of illegal pharmaceuticals online, and so on. We have successfully applied for a grant from ARIN to undertake some research on RPKI uptake in the region, and we are also busy trying to obtain academic research partnerships. We have one in place with American University, and we're talking with a couple of other major universities with the objective to form partnerships with them as well. On access to data, Lucien's going to take you through the DAP in a second, so I won't say more than that. On standards, we did a roundtable on the 7th of September. Andrew came to that and played a very active role in the discussions. We prepared a paper in anticipation of that to help people understand what had happened to new IP, which is the sort of term given to a set of proposals put forward by Chinese proponents at the ITU in the sort of 2018-2019 period. And we looked at, how those proposals have evolved after their initial rejection, how they have started to pop up in smaller rebranded formats in other standards organizations. And that paper is available on our website if you'd like to have a look at it. We had a panel event at Chatham House for supporters and key partners, and now we are going all out for organising an event on cybercrime on the 10th of November in Brussels. So I will now hand over to Lucien, who will take you through the technical system that we've been developing to support our work. Very happy to pause here and take any comments and questions if you have any.
I think that might be quite good, Emily, and also I'll drive the next bit rather than you having to figure that out while you've got COVID. So does anyone have any questions about governance and the setup of the whole thing?
I'm tempted to say, apart from that slide you just put up, what else have you been doing? But not bad for your first year, to be fair. See, in the meantime, Michael, you've raised your hand. Do you want to come in?
Yep, thank you. Emily, who are you working with at American University? Is that publicly available?
Oh, yeah. So we're working with quite a broad range of people. So we've been very fortunate to be working with Professor Cogburn, Derek Cogburn, and his team, who are from the computer science faculty. We've also got support from the more administrative side of the house, if you like, with Diana Burley and Sasha O'Connell, and we are working with a researcher called Divya Ramji, who's looking more into the ransomware aspects.
Excellent, thank you. Looking forward to that. And is it possible, I was just on the website and there's lots of research and papers. Could you perhaps give me a link to the new IP research that you
Definitely.
did, if possible?
Yeah, I'll pop that in the chat, Michael. I'll track it down and put it in the chat there.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Michael. Peter, you've got your hand raised as well.
Yeah, sorry. Is it okay to ask questions now? Should I wait until the end?
No, please do.
So yeah, I was curious if you're working with any commercial resolvers, in particular DNS filtering companies or anything like that.
No, but we would be really happy to learn more. I'm very thrilled to be sort of speaking to this group, because that's been an area that we've really struggled to get data. We've been very fortunate speaking to Quad 9, and I see that John's on the call here today, but generally the sort of the resolver data is something that's somewhat of a mystery to us, and so we would be really keen to make connections and have any advice from you guys on that.
Okay, cool. Well, let's chat offline then. But cool, thanks.
Thanks, Peter. Alison, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I had a question that maybe I missed, but I'm interested in whether you'll federate somewhat with DNS-ORC, since there's a very different set of data there, and I'm sure that it's very interesting for ORC to have more of a policy, have the angles that you're taking up that they haven't taken up, that we haven't taken up.
Oh, thank you very much, Alison. Yeah, clearly we have huge respect for the work of the DNS OARC, and I've been fortunate to work with Dinesh and Keith for many years. So I think that in a way, as you said in your question, Alison, I think there should be a lot of synergy between what we're doing and what the OARC is doing. The sort of the audience, if you like, or the type of researchers are possibly a little bit different, because I view, maybe wrongly, I view the OARC community as like quite more heavily technical, whereas we're trying to serve the more social sciencey policy type of communities. Clearly there's a lot of crossover, and hopefully that's a community that we can really establish strong links with. We would love to
That's
do
why
that.
I said something about federating, because it's really key to have this other audience and to be looking outward into the impacts in a way which is not the technician's point of view only, but having a report at OARC that kind of helps to sort of show how you see things, I think would be pretty cool as a sort of regular thing. I'm not speaking I'm just, because I'm a regular.
Yeah, no, I know that sort of it's you're not making any commitments, but definitely what you're describing sounds really attractive, and I think there could be a lot of potential for maybe shared events or speaking at blah blah blah, that sort of thing. But yeah, really keen to collaborate in any way.
One thing I could offer, that's a good thought, Alison. So offline from this call, one of the OARC team actually lives near me, Emily. So maybe that's something we could coordinate. I could arrange a conversation to sort of see how that might work out. Okay, so good thought, Alison. Anyone else got any questions before we hand over to Lucien? Vicky?
I would just like to add the DNS working group at RIPE to OARC. These are both groups that mostly are dealing with the technical issues, but as somebody who participates regularly in RIPE and OARC, I can guarantee that the people working on the technical standards want to be informed of what's happening on the regulatory side, and are worried about what other people who aren't as technically well informed might be doing, and I think would absolutely welcome updates, not at the tedious level of a detail, but of the sort of oh shit, what's this IPv2 thing kind of detail.
That's right. Yeah, and we had
honestly,
a great visit. Sorry.
Yeah, that's also a community that you could really harness when you need, to maybe like organize public comment on some of these things, where there's a lot of discussion that I hear about this is wrongheaded or whatever. But oftentimes a lot of that doesn't come through in the public comment, because that sort of engagement is kind of outside of the comfort level of expertise, and maybe also for some employers, not mine, but for some employers, they may not want to, I don't know, engage too directly in the those kind of public policy statements, but the technical community certainly has a lot to offer there. Anyway, I just meant to amplify what Allison was saying. I think that would be a great plan. I just add RIPE to that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Vicky. We actually just got back from visiting the RIPE NCC last week, and we had a day of workshops with them where we talked a lot about their amazing, you know, RIPE Atlas and RIPE Stat projects, and yes, and sort of starting to understand more about the working groups. So definitely keen to pursue those communities and collaboration with them.
Great, thanks for that, Vicky. Pat?
Hi, Lucien. Hi, Emily. When do you anticipate your data service becoming live, and would you have any reservations about a regulatory authority using said data service?
Well, Pat, we know you, so no. But yeah, we're at our friends and family stage at the moment, Pat, where we're giving people a login and onboarding, and actually asking them to help us with some, you know, let's say honest but constructive feedback on sort of data, what data's in there and the functionality and so on. So we'd be really happy to arrange an onboarding with you and anybody else on the call who would be interested.
Thanks very much, Emily. That's most welcome. We use a number of different services, commercial and otherwise. So yeah, we'd be more than happy to have a look around. And I think there's some of the reading through the docs, there's some things there which are of great interest to us to understand how things are going on the internet. So thank you.
Magic. Great. Thanks.
Thanks, Pat. That'd be a great segue to Lucien in a moment. But firstly, a question or comment from Jim, and then perhaps we'll pause there and go into the demo. So Jim.
Thanks, Andrew. I just wanted to make a quick point about a potential arrangement with DNS work. It might be a simpler thing, Emily, for this research foundation to become a member of DNS work, because the organisation has a very strict policy on data sharing and access to DNS work's data repositories. So broadly speaking, the data that's been given to them by some of the members can only be shared with other members. You can extract data from that, but it then has to go through to the board before it can be published. So that might be the necessary part of any potential tie-up with them. I don't think it's going to be quite as simple as just knock you on the door and say, please come have a look at your data.
Oh no, yeah. Thanks, Jim. I'm very I'm not surprised to hear you say that was part of our onboarding of data into the DAP project is to understand any rules of the road and terms and to abide by them. So
amongst other things, they've got one of the biggest data repositories, a thing called the DITL exercise, Day in the Life of the Internet. And what they do for that is they capture now all of the DNS data for a day that goes to the root servers, all of them. So that usually is the order of about 10 terabytes for each time they do this exercise. And they sometimes get query log files from big resolver operators as well. And of course, sometimes the IP addresses are obscured for all sorts of privacy reasons. So this becomes another issue you need to bear in mind if you're actually going to do an analysis of this data. I've been caught out with that in the past. But this is something you can work out. I'm sure you can come to an understanding with them, but it might be a little more complicated to do that than you may have initially thought.
Oh, thank you very much, Jim. That's really useful to know. Thanks.
Wow, Jim. Yeah, thank you. We hadn't actually got that on our hit list of about 100 feeds we're targeting, but thank you very much for that. That's very helpful. Shall I share? If you're happy, I'll carry on.
Please do, Lucien.
Yeah, you should now be looking at do you see the slide saying DAP.live? Yes, great. Okay, this is our DNS Analytics Platform. It contains an acronym within the acronym. It's DNS Analytics Platform. It's a platform built upon 20 years of domain name software development and research. Basically, Oxford Information Labs is the sort of founder company of the DNS Research Federation, and together with Emily, we run it with another partner, Mark Robertshaw, who's our technical CTO, and basically Mark and I, for over 20 years, have been developing software. We started in the early days just writing software and big database stuff, and just trying to earn any money we could writing software. Then we were introduced to this funny thing called the DNS after a couple of years by Emily, who I'm also married to. And she was working at Nominet there as their chief attorney. And they needed a dispute resolution service system, which we wrote in 6 weeks. And there we were. We were into the DNS space in that fascinating world. We went on to become everything DNS. So we wrote our own and operate our own domain name registration platform with many of the TLDs out there, and we run that for we also run that for Roller, the registrar of last resort, and we got more and more into kind of security work around the DNS, and we do a lot of ongoing rolling work and projects with the with UK Gov, particularly in standards and standards development. So everything DNS is our small technical team here in Oxford. What we did was we repurposed a lot of our research tools, which we've been using for a lot of longitudinal database studies. One study we do is the internationalized domain name study with UNESCO, URID, and others. And we repurposed this stuff that we've been building slowly for our own use for 20 years. So we didn't start off with DAP.live a year ago. It exists. A lot of it has been used for a long time in the DNS space. And we've as kind of investors ourselves, together with Meta, who have provided a lot of seed funding for the first 3 years, we have put this software into open source libraries so that nobody's locked in with using us. However, we're always helpful. We're always willing to sort of help others provide bespoke workflows and solutions for their particular interest. Currently, we have more than 26 data sources available. Those are accessible from our website. Hold on, I'll just move back with 39 plus data packages, which are kind of where we take any number of data sources and we curate them, we combine them, we deduplicate them and refine and normalize them. And we're onboarding is underway with researchers, new partners, and friends and people we know. Basically, what is DAP.live? It is a system that ingests a number of feeds. They are heterogeneous feeds. They can be open zone files. They can be just basically a folder full of files. Open data sources like the CZDS, together with commercial feeds. And Emily and her team are negotiating. Sorry, Emily's just spluttering away in the background. Emily and her team are basically negotiating with the feed providers the legal terms of the federation. Generally, the more commercial providers are doing good deals for use of the data in academic and public safety contexts. As for industry use, where people actually want to use it for some other benefit, commercial benefit or whatever, we've yet to sort out with them a sort of down market and a kind of cost recovery. We're less interested in that at this stage, but we do want to open up that channel for them so that they're not so reluctant to be generous with their data if they feel that there's a way of us not kind of appropriating their data and just, you know, basically repackaging their entire service and taking them out of the market. So we're finding they're generous with education, generous with public safety, and we've yet to work up maybe some cost recovery or reseller type thing later down the line. But the important thing at this stage is that we have to, and we have templated a different kind of service for each feed. Some of the feeds are through the API only and on demand. Some of the data is in bulk, and our system has to reflect the restrictions that are both there on the feed provider at source and the terms of their license, but also on different users, so that different accounts get access to different types of data, and very often different sort of formats of data as well. Some may have in bulk and others may be on API only. So we take in this stuff. We publish our latest data sources, which are kind of data-driven documentation here. Here we've got listed the full number of data sources that we're currently supporting. Some of you will think this is low-hanging fruit. You know, this is stuff that's publicly available anyway. This is stuff that we can just buy. There are other data sources we need, and I really appreciated the tip-off for DNS work. That sounds very exciting, and others that we're pleading for at this stage, which I'll talk about later. So we take these feeds, and basically what we're doing is we're ingesting all of this data, we're doing something to it, and we're outputting it. So it's inputs, analysis, and outputs. Those outputs can be in various raw formats, dashboards. You can just stay on the software site itself, or we can provide, and we provide, a number of what we call dynamic data feeds and the exports that you would expect, JSON format, CSV format, that sort of thing. So first of all, we get to a sort of sense maker. We take this stuff in and we normalize it, deduplicate it, and present it then as not as raw feeds, but what we call data package data. From there, we can target the more of the techies and the data scientists who are maybe trying to resolve particular research questions, and they can interrogate the system and produce and save their queries. The tools that we're giving them at that stage are more like sort of spreadsheet stuff, so it's more geared towards the researcher rather than the SQL programmer. And so it's giving them a sort of expert interactive tools to build queries and save stored queries and gain the output in raw table format. From there, they can do all sorts of things with it. The first thing is they can create their own dashboards. Those dashboards include threshold builders, so they can also build their own notifications. Notifications can have a level of importance and they can have various forms. So you may say, well, if one data value goes over a certain point, email me once a week. If something else goes over a certain point, then send me a text message straight away. I don't know if any of you have had experience of the sort of Grafana dashboards and that sort of thing. We've certainly got our own strategic dashboards in the office to help us just look at various things and gain alerts. Here we're looking at a dashboard which is very much your domain tools type of dashboard, though I really want to emphasize we are absolutely not domain tools, and we're not going to make all of this public until we have a selection of dashboards that reflect particular types of use cases. That may be brand watching, it may be just threat intelligence, support, all sorts of things. So, but here we're looking at a dashboard of a brand that we manage called Netistrar, which is a small registrar that we operate. We're not a registrar. We don't particularly care about registrars really. We need to understand more about registrars, so we developed our own registrar, which has a relatively small number of domain names. It has 40,000 domain names under management, and we want to explore ways of managing those domain names more effectively and more securely. So this is a kind of test bed for any services that registrars we may develop, though that is not in any way a primary purpose of this project. Continuing, so then we have export tools, which are more like for the target are for sort of public safety and researchers who may want PDFs, spreadsheets, that sort of thing to ingest into their own systems or to share with others in sort of snapshots. We also have a dynamic API builder, so you can build your own outputs and data in the form of stored queries, and then create your own API endpoint that you can then access through an API key and ingest to your own system. And we're actually helping others set up connections with their own internal systems as well to sort of put this DAP.live into their own workflows. And that's becoming something that's becoming increasingly popular. So I'm going to skip these two. These get quite technical and basically summarize. I mean, Emily, do you want to pick up this bit about how to get involved?
You know, we're just starting out. We're looking for as much support in financial and non-financial ways.
Might just be me, Emily, but you're very quiet. I don't know if that's true for
sorry.
others.
Okay. Is that better?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I think yeah, so we're just getting started. We're looking for help, whether it's financial or non-financial. I mean, for this group, it would be amazing to have your help or advice about, you know, data, particularly on traffic and DNS resolution. We've put a few our wish list up there for things that we're really struggling to get hold of. We're going to be publishing partnership tiers in the very near future, which will enable people to join us and give us money at various high, medium and low levels. But also if your organization is interested in particularly examining one area or more, maybe commissioning research or even co-hosting events, that's something that we've been having some success with. And obviously, you know, we had that query from Pat, but if you would like to have access to the DAP, please let us know.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, does anyone have any sort of questions on any of that? Or indeed any observations on the demo for those of you that are more in that space? Vicky?
This is more of a comment than a question. At ISC, we have been trying for years to get resolver data. We needed something fairly specific. It's a reasonably long-term capture that includes the full queries, and this is something that we use just for testing purposes. It's not to create a secondary product or anything. And so I know that data is very difficult to get, and a lot of parties are not going to be permitted to share it with you, even if it's anonymized. So it occurs to me that possibly your community of universities, researchers, people like that who are trying to get free data and services from you might be your best bet. The other thing is, on occasion, we've thought maybe we could get some data from someone, and it would have been helpful to have someone who would be willing to provide like an escrow service to guarantee that it had been anonymized. That might be another thing you might consider. That's it.
Thank
That's
you, Vicky. Yeah, really good advice. Thank you.
Thank you
Great.
so much. And I think there is a very big topic that's sort of emerging at all our sort of talks and things is a sort of data trust, a kind of escrow service, and how to have this controlled environment of open data. You know, particularly around the big brands as well. Why does the big brand want to share data that gives away their own intelligence system or lack of it? And what are they watching? And then we can see what they're not watching and all of this. But we need to understand this to understand the problem. I mean, there's also a very DNS industry-led response to DNS abuse, for example. But that's really well put together. The analytics are very good. The data sources are very good, but they're not complete. We're not getting standardized consumer reporting data. There's brand data. I mean, there's a lot of data missing from that picture. So the more that we can build a case for a safe space for people to share their data, even if it's with limited research groups, that would be, you know, that's a really valuable thing. And I think that's more of our campaign as a research federation than anything else, really.
Yeah, all good points. Does anyone else want to come in with any questions or comments? Just give you a moment to do so if you wish. And if not, I suppose two just final questions for me. One is, and you may have already put it in the chat, in which case apologies. What's the best route for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
And also, are you happy to share the slides? Would be the second question. Just responding, saying I had in the chat sent to me.
Yes, to sharing the slides, and I think if you email Lucien or myself, if you'd like to get in touch, I can just pop our emails into the chat, and we'd love to hear from.
And I just wanted to repeat Emily's offer and our offer all the time. With friends and people we know, we're doing an onboarding session of about half an hour. I didn't actually demonstrate DAP today. I demonstrated some screenshots and gave you an overview of its capability. We want anybody, it doesn't have to be techies, you know, to feel welcome to book an appointment and have a proper look at it with a small group of us.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lucien. And last words to Peter.
I just wanted to say it looks very cool. The capabilities you've created and the stuff you're doing, and the data sources you're getting in and the outreach you're doing just looks brilliant. So that's pretty much it. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. Can we put that on our website? Thank you anyway. Thanks.
Brilliant. That's not a bad one to fish on. Thank you for that, Peter. And well, thank you, Lucien and Emily, particularly Emily, given your challenge health conditions. I think you managed extremely well in difficult circumstances. Okay, we'll just move on now. You're both welcome to stay on or not as you see fit, but if you do disappear, thanks very much for your time. Excellent presentation. Okay, let me just reshare my screen again. And so just a quick heads up on a few recent developments, just cherry picking a couple of things from the sort of headlines of this week. It was from roughly a week ago. Cloudflare, for its 10th anniversary, made a sort of tranche of announcements. And just in case you missed it amongst the many, there was a really interesting announcement of its sort of privacy edge, which looks a bit like a sort of a white label version of Private Relay. I mean, it does more things than that, and so it's a bit overly simplistic, but using oblivious HTTP and various other tools. So if you missed that and it's of interest, it's definitely worth a look. It's a very comprehensive set of announcements that were made, as I say, roughly a week ago. And then more recently, last Thursday, again, amongst the various announcements from Google, was that the latest Pixel devices, the Pixel 7 and Pixel 7 Pro, are getting the Google's VPN service built in. It's Google One VPN service, which again is looks a bit like a competitor to sort of iCloud Plus, Private Relay, etc. So again, sort of two different iterations to compete with the Apple announcements. One which is Google specific, the other one which is more generic from Cloudflare. So worth a look if you have a moment. Jeff Houston from AP Nick, don't know where he gets them. Oh, interesting spelling. Where he gets the time to do a piece on internet or DNS fragmentation, that should say, or fragmentation. That's a new thing that you've probably never heard of. So fragmentation. In the internet namespace. So the sort of thought-provoking is always, as I say, I don't know where Jeff gets the time to sort of pull these pieces together. I think he did two within the last week, but that's worth a look if you have it. There's an update on the kindness initiative from ICANN. So if you missed that, you may recall that ADL came on this call a number of months back. So that's moved on somewhat. So you'll see some more content there, and then more on the policy side. If you're following some of the developments around EU and US data privacy, and the SHREM 2 announcement from probably a couple of years ago now, there's a new announcement from the US to hopefully allow the sharing of personal data between the EU and the US in a more sort of safe and robust way, respecting EU privacy or respecting GDPR specifically. So I'll put that in there. And then finally, just for fun, you'll see there's a sort of data leak on the DNS, but this particular DNS was the Russian retail chain called the DNS. So it's not at all DNS related, other than it happens to share the same name, which I saw on social media. I think Peter spotted that first, and I think I saw it from his Twitter feed, but it made me laugh anyway when I saw that. So it's always a DNS that you have to blame for everything, basically. And then finally on that page, just a reminder that any submissions for ITF 115, the cutoff is 24th October, so a couple more weeks. And that's also the cutoff for standard rate, after which it goes to the I think $1,000 for on-site attendance, up from I think it's something like $850, something like that, for the standard rate. So if you're planning to attend in person, book in the next 2 weeks, and equally there's a similar saving, but it's not as much for remote attendance as well. In terms of forthcoming events, there's, as we discussed before, quite a few coming up over the next couple of months. We've already touched on the DNS OARC and RIPE 85 back-to-back in Belgrade in a couple of weeks' time. In between that, you've got various other things coming up. NANOG 86 in Hollywood, if you're in the US, and that should say the first one. Apologies, I cut it off. Internet Governance Forum, Internet Governance Project rather. Milton Muller and co. have got an event in The Hague next week. coming up, which is very policy rather than technically orientated. And then, of course, it's not that far now, less than a month till ITF 115. And then just after that, recently announced the ICANN DNS Symposium in Brussels, so in the middle of November, and then culminating with IGF in Addis Ababa. At the end of the month, leading into December. And along the way, a reminder that Eurodig, although that's not till mid next year, the cutoff for any proposed sort of topics or themes that people would like to see covered there is the end of this month, after which the Secretariat will start to pull together what the programme looks like. So if you want to influence that, you've got to the end of the month to input. In terms of this call, next week we'll talk about what's on the agenda for OARC and RIPE 85. There won't be a call the week after because I'll be in Belgrade, and I don't like to multitask to that extent. It'll be a bit too exciting. After that, we'll talk about what's coming up in ITF 115. And also just reflect on any highlights from OARC and RIPE 85. The draft agenda for ITF 115 is already available. That will be finalised, I think it was the end of this week. And I noticed that there are more sessions, I think just responding to sort of pressure on agenda slots. They've added an additional session on the sort of Tuesday and Thursday nights to allow more working groups to get agenda time, which is good to see. And it starts earlier in the day as well. It starts at 9:30. Again, I think just to extend the amount of time, which is fantastic for those of us that will be there in person. A bit more challenging if you're attending remotely, but swings and roundabouts. I think that's everything from me. So let me stop sharing and say, does anyone have anything else that you want to highlight? So any other business from anyone, now's your chance in the remaining sort of 3-4 minutes if you want to jump in. So put something in the chat and I'll read it out, or just raise your hand, unmute and come on the call and say so. I'll give you a moment or two to do that if you have anything. Right, I'm not seeing any raised hands, and I'm not seeing anything appearing in the chat just yet. So in which case, let's say sort of thanks again to Emily and Lucien for a fascinating update on what's been going on and what's planned with the DNS Research Federation. I think that's going to be really amazing. You'll see the email, both our emails in the chat, and I'll share the slides afterwards for those of you that have asked for that. So thanks everyone for your time. Have a fantastic week as always, and we'll catch up again same time next week. So see you all then. Thanks all.
Thank you.